Welcome to Prepare For Takeoff. I'm the creator and host, Cyrus. We're the podcast dedicated to amplifying Black excellence. Every week, we sit down with a proven professional or rising entrepreneur. This week, we're sitting down with Dr. Tia Welsh. Dr. Welsh, what's going on?
Nothing much, just the babies.
First off, I just wanted to salute you and what you represent as far as Black excellence. And you used to have the distinction of being a doctor. In our community, that's a huge accomplishment, as well as other communities, to say the least. So kind of wanted to give our viewers and listeners the opportunity to hear what it is to be Dr. Tia Welsh and what that consists of. And then we'll kind of go back and see how you actually got to your destination as you know it today.
Well, I am an OB-GYN and I am the chair of a women's health service at a local community hospital. So what that means is that I have oversight of physicians and other types of clinicians in our OB-GYN practices, as well as the hospital, which includes labor and delivery, and the ORs where we do gynecological surgeries.
You definitely are hands-on with the babies.
Absolutely.
So is that something that you always wanted to do?
I have wanted to do that since the fourth grade when I started watching The Cosby Show, and Bill Huxtable was an OB-GYN.
Where did you grow up? Are you from New York or did you matriculate from somewhere else?
I grew up in Staten Island, New York. I know there's not a lot of people that other people will say, I've never met anybody from Staten Island, but there
Wu-Tang.
are people that look like us on Staten Island.
Well, listen, shout out to Wu-Tang. I mean, so it's you, it's Wu-Tang, it's Force MDs.
Absolutely.
Right. Nah, so I know I'm familiar with Staten Island just based on where I am in Jersey. So I definitely frequent the borough, and I definitely know that there's a little more diversity than people realize. It may not be like Brooklyn, it may not be the Bronx, but it's enough of us there where you're not going to be a complete stranger in the room. Was your family a couple of generations in as far as Staten Island residents, or did they matriculate from another borough?
Nope, my grandparents migrated from the South to Staten Island. One of the junior high schools was named after my great-grandfather for being the first president of the NAACP on Staten Island. My other grandfather was well known. He was actually recruited to the Yankee minor leagues. So for a Black man on Staten Island, he was known for his athletics. Unfortunately, he never played for them because they didn't pay Black athletes a lot of money, and he had 5 kids to support.
What was it like growing up in Staten Island? Were the children inviting? Was there any kind of racial tension when you were growing up?
Probably none that I saw, because Staten Island is like the Mason-Dixon line. So on the North Shore, it is more Black people than not. And on the South Shore, which we didn't really go over there too much, you didn't see people that looked like us. So we just stayed to one side of the island. And again, I always had family around and I studied hard. So I earned everything I got. I really didn't face racism growing up. Not overt anyway.
Now, did you stay in the city for your higher education or did you go outside of the New York metropolitan area?
I went to the University of Virginia for college, but quickly knew that I wanted to be back in an urban area. So when I applied for medical school, I quickly came home and went to medical school in Brooklyn.
You attended UVA. So was there an adjustment that you had to make when you attended school there?
I think just being away from home and away from family, I would say that I'm pretty adaptable to any environment, and I found my tribe. The University of Virginia is known as a PWI, a predominantly white institution, and I think there was less than 20% African Americans enrolled in that time. Yet I found my tribe and had a very Black experience. To be honest with you, you couldn't tell me that I wasn't at a HBCU because that's what we surrounded ourselves with.
You came back to the city, you attended medical school in Brooklyn. So what was that experience like?
That too was a culture shock. Growing up on Staten Island, you have basically Black Americans and white Americans. And coming to Brooklyn, I was around the most Caribbeans that I've ever seen before. It wasn't something that I was used to growing up on Staten Island, and more Black people than I've ever seen before. And that was the first time that I felt comfortable in the skin that I was in.
I think life is what you make it.
There
If
you go.
If you want something, then you have to be intentional about seeking what it is you want, whether that's a cultural experience, whether that's an educational experience, or whether that's a professional journey. The only person that is going to stand in the way of that is the person in the mirror. That's something that I champion, and that's something that I encourage, whether it's my generation, whether it's my daughter's generation, and granted her generation, she's 11. So she's got some time. But I want everybody who looks like us to feel like they belong.
Absolutely.
And oftentimes we have to have those examples in front of us. And that's what kind of prompted us to have this platform, Prepare for Takeoff. I want people to see people of color who are doctors, who are lawyers, people who are executives in sports, all walks of life, because we don't just do one thing. We don't represent just one professional trajectory. Oftentimes people may come to that realization that, hey, I can do 5 or 10 things. Growing up in West Virginia, I wasn't fully aware of who I could be. And despite the community that I grew up in, I still didn't think there was but so many things I wanted to do as it relates to the things that was of interest to me. Entertainment was something that's always interested me. But I grew up in West Virginia. That's not like an entertainment hotbed.
Very
And-
similar upbringings, like you said. Although I was in a Black community, when I went to school, it was something different.
Mhm.
And again, they used to separate students in school based on scores. So I was always away from my peers, and one of two in my class that looked like me. And again, going to Virginia, you had your down south folks, you had your DMV, Virginia, DC, Maryland folks, and you had your New York City folks. And you found your tribe and what you feel comfortable. But it wasn't until I moved to Brooklyn that I saw value in me and said, hey, I can do this,
Right.
and didn't compare myself.
I'm sure. And not only were you around people who looked like you, were around people who had the same professional trajectory. You
Yes,
were around people who are the same intellect.
yes,
And, so you had those things in common. Now, once you went through medical school, did you do your residency in Brooklyn or did you do it
I
in the
did.
city? You
I
did?
did. And if I didn't see it, it doesn't exist. Not in Kings County, not in Flatbush, Brooklyn. If it wasn't there, it doesn't exist.
What are some of the challenges that you faced when you went to residency? What was that adjustment like for you from the classroom to the hospital?
I think just realizing that you are a doctor, you're going from being a medical student to you're a medical resident, but you're still an MD, and that the decision lies on you and they're trusting in you and what you say. I think that's probably the hardest transition that I had. But I always went to work with a smile, with energy to learn more, to do more, because the patients look like me and not all the physicians look like me. And I said, who more is going to be in tune with their needs and understand their language and understand their needs than me? Um, and that's what I set my career on, to help women that look like me.
We had a couple of episodes that were sponsored by Advil. They have a pain equity campaign, Believe My Pain, as it relates to people of color, how a lot of times when they come to the hospital, they meet with medical professionals. People don't necessarily believe what it is that they describe their realities to be as far as pain and the threshold of which. And we had a chief medical officer from Dillard University who was
Mhm.
explaining to us, and he's also a CBS Gulf Coast correspondent. And he was just saying that they actually taught early on in medical school that people of color had a higher threshold for pain than white women. Now, was that something by the time you went through medical school and did your residency, was that something that people still kind of in the back of their mind thought was a reality, or that had already been long debunked?
That wasn't a reality where I was when 95% of the patients were people of
Right,
color.
right.
But what was a reality when I started my medical career was the difference between what was offered based on the insurance you have.
Mm.
So I know that when I did finally leave the boroughs, I went to Long Island and I was working for a federally qualified health center. And they said, wow, those patients are really lucky to have doctors like you. It was only 3 years ago that they offered patients with Medicaid an epidural. We're talking
Well,
about 2012, that patients with Medicaid weren't offered an epidural in a community hospital in Long Island, which is absurd. There are stark differences even today with what is offered based on the insurance and your ability to pay. We see it when it comes to the weight loss medications. Those that can pay for it get it.
That's so unfortunate. And to just think that you're going to allow someone's health experience to be dictated by what they can pay and what their insurance provider will pay. And like, how inhumane is that? But we shouldn't be surprised considering our history in this country and how everything is all about the dollar. And
Absolutely.
so it's great that you have people like yourself who represent many of the people that I'm sure are underrepresented as it pertains to fair treatment. And for them to come in there and see someone who they can relate to and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. I need someone to advocate on my behalf. And I think that's something that's very needed. And I know that especially in the New York metropolitan area, you do see that level of diversity that you may not necessarily see in Kentucky. You may not necessarily see in Nebraska or even Ohio as it relates to people of color who can relate to that patient. That patient can be a family member. That patient could be their child, whatever. So I think it has a lot to do with being able to identify with the community that you're serving. And I think whether that's in the medical community, and we've long discussed the brutality that we face at the hands of the police. Now, when people are coming from Suffolk County and you put them in East New York, a community that quite frankly, they're afraid of the residents, they're going to probably respond in a manner that's not in the best interest of the people that they're policing. I think the same holds true if somebody is coming from those same communities. You put them in a hospital where they have an opinion and their biases that come with that opinion is going to impact how they do their job. When you went from Brooklyn to Long Island, what were some of the other stark differences that you experienced?
I think that probably not so much as a difference, but when you're in residency and when you're in training and you're in a training hospital, patients are treated differently based on, I would say, their insurance, their skin color, and who they know. Imagine being a female in labor and having 5 different people examine your vagina. You wouldn't do that to a private patient who has a private doctor who has some standing in the community. But this is what happens, not under my watch. No matter how many, residents were there to learn or medical students, it's bad enough that one person has to do it, but I would never allow a line of people to do that or to do surgery and be the first assist and never having stepped in the room just to try something on a patient. This is what happens in some teaching hospitals that don't have proper guidance.
I had no idea. So essentially, if you're in the wrong set of circumstances, you're almost treated like a guinea pig.
Basically.
Mm.
Basically. And I remember telling my grandfather this when I was a medical student, all the things that I was learning to do. And I remember him going to the hospital and a short white coat is what he called it, because trainers have the short white coats, and came into his room and he said, "Oh no, I have a doctor and I want my doctor, not a trainee." And I felt so hurt back then because that was me. But I said, well, Grandpa, you got to let them get some information. He goes, "No, I don't have to. I'm not giving my consent to a trainee." But people don't know that they have that ability.
Thinking about starting your own business? Make it real with Shopify, the all-in-one platform trusted by millions to sell online and in person. Whether it's merch, art, or digital goods, Shopify gives you the tools to build, grow, and succeed. And here's the best part. When you sign up using the affiliate link in our show notes, you're supporting Prepare for Takeoff and starting your business off right. Click the link and start your free trial today. That's a good nugget. So if someone sees somebody with a shorter coat, they realize that, they're in training and there should be somebody to assist them with a longer coat to make certain that they are doing all of the things that they can be expected as it relates to what their medical journey would be with that particular doctor in question. When you were the person with the short coat, how were people treating you as it relates to patients that you've seen? Did they give you that same pushback that your grandfather gave, or were people just kind of more welcoming and inviting just based on your disposition?
I think because I was at a training hospital, it was an expectation. And again, a lot of people did not know that they could ask for someone. I always introduced myself as, a medical student when I was. So I didn't get much pushback. It was just the fact that I would spend hours sometimes over the course of a week with a patient, every day speaking to a patient. And on the day of discharge, they would ask me, well, when am I going to see the doctor?
Mm,
Well, that would be me, number one, whether I was a medical student or a resident. And so many times it was because I am someone of color,
mhm.
they would never assume that I was a doctor. I don't walk around. I didn't like walking around with a big white coat, short white coat. And I wanted to see how people would approach me, whether it was a nurse, whether it was another physician, just to see how I was treated with scrubs on. I was called everything but a doctor at times. Hey, nurse, or can you tell the nurse? They must have thought I was a nurse aide. Well, there's something over there that needs to be cleaned up. Maybe they thought I was the janitor, but anything but a doctor. And still today, I have patients that say, oh my gosh, I've never had a doctor of color.
That's crazy. You would never expect that. You would never think that that would be someone's reality. And we're talking 25 years ago.
Mhm.
25, not even 30 years ago, people still couldn't wrap their head around the idea that this person of color is my doctor. And they know as much as the person who isn't of color. Oftentimes, I'm sure they know more than that person that isn't of color because what's the old saying? We have to work twice as hard to get half as far.
It's like a 50-50, right? Some patients revel in the fact that you are a Black physician, you're a Black female physician. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to have you. And then there'll be the naysayers. You don't know as much as your white counterpart. So I would rather that physician. Did I get that sometimes? Yes. Well, I'd like a second opinion, not trusting and believing that I had their best interests. And it's okay. I've learned to, with every single patient, connect with them in some way, shape, or form, whether it's talking about cultural foods, whether it's talking about the clothes or the menopause at this point, childbearing, birth control, sex, men, where you grew up, where you live, what street you live, what bus you took. Your extracurriculars, just trying to connect with them to gain their trust.
I think that connection is key. And to make that connection and to not to just see them as just another patient, see them as the human that they are and realizing that they have a backstory as it relates to something that will allow you to connect with them, whether it's
Mm.
culturally, whether it's family, whether it's faith. And I think once you're able to get them to understand and realize you have their best interest in mind, then they may begin to open up. Just so our viewers and listeners will know, how long is your residency? If you're an OB-GYN, is that a 4-year experience? Is it longer than that?
As an OB-GYN, it is 4 years of residency. At this point, there are so many subspecialties within women's health that didn't even exist when I started out. So that could increase your training years, whether that's to be a maternal fetal medicine, which is a obstetrical specialist, to be a minimally invasive gynecologist, which is a surgeon, a urogynecologist, another type of surgeon, IVF, which is your infertility physicians, complex family planning specialists, and G1 oncology is yet another specialist for just GYN cancers.
I had the opportunity to have one of my fraternity brothers who's a thoracic surgeon. In fact, he's a section head. He's based in New Orleans at Ochsner, which is a huge health outfit in New Orleans and Louisiana as a whole.
I am familiar with it. I have more stories for you why I am familiar with that.
We want all the tea. We want all the tea. But yeah, he was just saying how, considering the amount of training he had to go through and how he had to just be steadfast and determined because he was, I'm sure, well into his 30s before he was able to see the fruits of his labor. So now to just get to the tea, like what's some of the stories that you said that, you can kind of touch on when I mentioned that to you?
Louisiana is known as having one of the poorest outcomes for Black women in their childbearing years. And my sister is a graduate of LSU, never came back home, loved it so much, and became pregnant in 2001. And I said, no, I'm going to be there for you when you deliver. I'm going to have to make sure that I'm down there. Towards the end of her pregnancy, I boarded a plane with my best friend, who's a pediatrician who works in the newborn nursery. And I induced my sister. And
Mm.
when we got to the hospital, her doctor had not been there because she had COVID. She went to Miami to party. And so I said, I am going to put hands on the baby when the baby's coming out. I was in a terry cloth romper with sandals and braids, never showed any credentials. And when my sister was delivering, I delivered my sister, everybody else being in the room, the nurse, the resident, the doctor on call. And I handed the baby to my sister, and they said, oh, this was easy. And I was disgusted by it. They never asked. I mean, my actions proved that I'm a doctor, but they never asked who I was, what I was doing, what my credentials were. I was not licensed in that state.
Mm.
No, it wouldn't happen in my hospital, but I wanted to ensure that she had the best outcome. And then the day after, my friend went to the hospital to check on the baby to ensure the baby did not have jaundice, the baby was okay, and baby was doing well. And they said, oh, you brought a whole team. I would have built more if it wasn't, still COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day at about 2:00, they told my sister and my mom and her fiance, she's good, she can go home. And the next shift will discharge her. So the next shift is usually an evening shift at 7 p.m. At 7 p.m., you want the new nurse to take assignment of all her other patients, get paperwork together to discharge my sister after 9 p.m. at night, when at 2 p.m. you're telling me she's ready to go.
Mm.
That didn't sit well. So, of course, I spoke to the nurse in charge to see why there would be such a delay.
Mm-hmm.
And quickly they said, oh, no, don't worry. And they discharged my sister. But had I not been here, I don't know that she would have had the outcome that she had.
That's crazy. So you just said, listen, take my word for it. I'm a doctor and I need to deliver the baby. They said, okay, cool.
Basically.
That's insane. And this is in 2000 or 2001? 21? That's crazy. That's something that you would see on television.
Basically. I didn't know that it would be that simple, but at the same time, if it wasn't, again, I don't know if she would have had the same outcome.
Then did they even at least assist you, or they just kind of got out of the way?
They got out of the way and they let me do my thing.
So they were learning from you.
I heard a comment as I was exiting out the door. Wow, that was the easiest delivery we've ever done.
That was a blessing for you to be able to do that for your sister and for your loved one, to bring them into the world. So that was a blessing, to say the least. So now, after you did your training, did you stay in New York, Long Island, or did you, at some point, did you leave the state?
I went to the Bronx. I went from one borough to the next.
Right.
I went to the Bronx, where I worked for the next 6 years at another city hospital in the Bronx. And again, I felt, at least in Kings County, a lot of the staff were people of color. Going up to the Bronx, you did not see that many physicians of color. And I felt like, if I'm not here, who else would be? Who's going to care for these patients? I just really took my career and said, I need to be here. At that point, I was living in Suffolk County, and I drove 2 hours every day because I wanted to be there. Do
you think it was a matter of people of color not wanting to matriculate to the Bronx, or you think they weren't given the opportunity to do so?
Well, in this country, there's less than 10% of the physicians are people of color. So just because you're in a predominantly Black neighborhood doesn't mean that you're going to find people that look like us. I did read recently Legacy by Dr. Uche Blackstock, who details her journey as being a Black female physician in New York City and training in Kings County, and saying, hey, they don't have the resources. Let me go to NYU. She goes to NYU and she's helping with medical students, and she sees one in a class of, I don't know how many, 12 residents, rather, one Black resident. So out of all the applicants in this country, you can only find one. Out of all of New York City, you could only find one in that program. You don't see many of us when we're going to medical schools and residency programs. It feels like a lot. Again, you can have that Black experience, but when you're in these hospitals, yeah, it could be one of two.
This episode of Prepare for Takeoff is brought to you in part by Riverside, the platform that I trust to record studio quality podcasts right from my laptop. With Riverside, I get crystal clear audio and 4K video. Plus, it's super easy to use. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, Riverside helps your podcast sound amazing. Try it out for yourself. Click the affiliate link in our show notes and start recording like a pro. with Riverside. I have a cousin who's also an OB-GYN. He's in Long Island and he seems to love what he does. And I think he's in Suffolk County as well. Now speaking of, because I know we talk about there's only 10% people of color. Now, is it a disparity between men and women out of that 10%? Are most of those 10% men or is it about 50-50?
I think I would like to say last time I looked at the statistics, most of them were Black females.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's a wide disparity into the fields that people are going into. Cardiothoracic, to see a Black female, that would be like a unicorn. Do they exist? Yes. But some of the more surgical fields, you're not going to see as many people that look like us or females that look like us.
Man, these are all jewels, things that I didn't know. I'm sure our viewers and listeners didn't know. At some point, did you come across the bridge to New Jersey and did you take up residency there? And what led to that?
So after I left the Bronx, I did work in Long Island for another 5 or 6 years to be closer to my children that we were raising because my husband was also working in Brooklyn. So one of us had to be there and I wanted to be closer. And along my journey, I've always had the good fortune of having someone superior to me grabbing my hand and saying, "Hey, I see this in you. Take this path. Let me build you up as a leader. Let me build you up further to go here." And that's what happened in the hospital in the Bronx. And that's what happened when I took a job in Long Island. When it comes to supportive parents, I would say my husband and I are very supportive. And my daughter wanted to take an Olympic journey in gymnastics and we moved. And my husband and my kids are in Pennsylvania and I got a job in New Jersey. So I shuffled between New Jersey and Pennsylvania and I took another leadership role here a first time as the lead of a department. So that's what brought me to Jersey. And when I was seeking other opportunities, was the first time again, probably was the third time that I saw value in myself and saying, wow, wait a minute, people are seeking me out to do these really big roles that I didn't think that I was fit for, but they see that in me. And so it was really nice when I was going on interviews to say, wait a minute, I started to know my worth. And I didn't for all that time, even though people thought, wow, you're a Black physician, you're a Black female physician, you're doing all these good things. I didn't see what other people saw. It took different times in my career that I started to know who I was, know my worth, and not have that, syndrome where you feel like imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time, I got rid of that.
What we enjoy doing most is giving people those flowers, reminding them who they are and how and why they represent Black excellence. Because you hear that a lot, having that imposter syndrome. I'm sure I've experienced it on some level. And I've heard other people say how they've had to navigate that because you come in a room and you don't see many people who look like you. And then when you go back to your community where you come from or your peer group, whether it's friends or family, none of those people, they may not share the same professional path as you. So it becomes more and more difficult to find as you mentioned, your tribe. But you have to find that tribe within here. You have to look in the mirror and that's your tribe.
There you go. There you
That's your
go.
tribe. And then you have the support of your family. I mean, to be able to navigate family, profession, all the demands of your profession and, being a wife, being a mother. So how did you manage to do all of that? Like not only are you someone who represents Black excellence, you're a superhero out here. You out here Wonder Woman and doing your thing. So how did you manage to do all of that?
I have a very supportive husband. He is retired NYPD, but because he is retired, he is now daddy Uber, and we're both semi-retired since my daughter has her license. But he has always fostered me being excellent.
Mm.
Hey, if you need to go to school, get your master's. Go back, get another master's. Go get that job. He's never stopped me from being ambitious. Sometimes I think he was more ambitious than I was in my career. So with his support, family support, my soror support, friend support, I always get, Tia, how do you do that? I put one foot in front of the other and I accomplish my goals because that's what I want my kids to see.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter did make the Jamaican national team. Unfortunately, she got hurt.
Mm.
and didn't make the Olympic team, but we did take her to the Olympics. She's now got a 4-year scholarship that she's looking
Congratulations.
forward to. And my son is up and coming. Everybody knows him in football. You know, my whole family's athletic. My mom is 70, lifts weights, is a weightlifter, a track coach. So Black excellence didn't start with me. It
You
was
come
passed on.
you come from a long line of Black excellence, and then you have that support of, shout out to your husband for being so supportive. And now keep in mind, just for our viewers and listeners, I had no idea that your husband was a retired NYPD officer. But keep in mind, one of the things I mentioned earlier in the podcast was the police.
Yeah.
And now to realize that, I'm sure similar to you, he was someone who was able to show up in the community and say, listen, I look like you. I can identify with whatever it is you're going through. So to be able to have that from both sides, whether it's in the community or in the hospital, I'm
Yeah.
sure you guys are like-minded in that regard. You had mentioned that you're a member of the Divine Nine. So too am I. As you know, I'm a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. So what sorority are you a part of?
Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated.
Okay. All right. Shout out to Z Phi B. I have quite a few of my friends are members of Z Phi B. I've been in the Divine Nine for a long time. I crossed in 91, even though I may not look like it. You know, I was a teenager when I crossed, like literally was a teenager. I pledged my second semester at West Virginia State. And so,
Not far behind you, fall of
okay.
97.
Okay. All right. So you in the 90s, you in the 90s.
I'm in the 90s.
Right. Yeah. So it seems like yesterday that I crossed. It seemed like yesterday that I graduated. Like when people always say, especially speaking of family, when they say, "Oh, you're getting so big." When I was growing up, I was literally looking at them like I'm not getting any bigger than my friends. But now that we've had the good fortune of getting older, it's like I see what they're saying. Speaking of OB-GYN experiences, and Dr. Welsh, I really thought that my daughter's doctor, her mom's OB-GYN, I really thought that she was capping when she seen the ultrasound, she was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen a baby look so much like one of their parents. And I'm looking at this ultrasound, I'm like, come on. And she was a woman of color. She was a sister. And I was like, okay, she's gassing me up. Until that little munchkin showed up. And I was like, how did she see that on that ultrasound? And I mean, so I had a very welcoming experience as far as my daughter's birth. She was born in the city. I jokingly say to my friends, it's like a magic trick. You go to the hospital with two people and you come back with a third person. The magic of childbirth is amazing. And that was the first time that I actually had a tear of joy. And when I would hear that all the time, had never experienced it. I was so happy just out of nowhere I had this tear of joy. So I mean that experience is something that I'll cherish for the rest of my life. So as we close out, I just wanted to once again thank you for giving us so much of your time. And then also I wanted to give you the opportunity to share with our viewers and listeners 3 things that you feel will help them prepare for takeoff.
My first one is know that you are good enough. Lessons that I had learned during my journey as a physician. You are good enough the way you are. But at the same time, number 2, never stop striving to do more or be more. And 3, get a mentor. Get a mentor. That's what helped me in my career path. I've always had someone over my shoulder pushing me, guiding me, and that's how other folks do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so often I feel people are like, oh, I got this. No, you don't got it. There's nothing wrong with having help and guidance. Go seek that person out that is in a position where you want to be.
I couldn't agree more. Like oftentimes we forget that African proverb. If you want to go somewhere fast, go alone. If you want to go somewhere far, you have to go with others. We are a community and success is a shared experience. We have to pour into that in a very intentional manner. And we have to seek help. We have to put our pride in our back pocket. In our community, you hear a lot of people say, especially, the older generation who raised us, don't let nobody in your business.
Yeah.
You keep
Man,
what you got going on inside, but you can't do that.
I'm an open book. You can ask me anything.
Look,
I don't live life with regrets, and you can't use my negatives to shame me because there have been learning experiences for me. Negative, positive, I'm gonna tell you.
what did Jay-Z say? It's not a loss, it's a lesson.
There you
And
go.
and we're all out here learning lessons. And the people that try to do it alone, they're really putting themselves in a no-win situation. And you're really putting yourself in a position to be more likely to be the prey of the enemy. Because the enemy wants to, now I'm gonna take you to church a little bit. So the enemy wants to isolate you from the flock.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the ways that he can isolate you is by having you to believe it's just you. You're the only one going through that. You're the only one experiencing that. It's just you. Something's wrong with you. And one of the things that I share with people is that's what they mean by the devil is a lie. Whatever negativity that you have floating around in your head is a lie. The devil is a lie. Like, you are God's creation. You are meant for greatness. Don't let the enemy steal that. The devil is always out here trying to steal the gifts that God has that you may have ordered from the proverbial Amazon in the sky. And then the devil is out here. He's out here stoop hustling. What gifts can I steal from you through fear and doubt? And I feel if I give people of color enough examples of who they can be on a platform like Prepare for Takeoff, you can begin to navigate that voice in your mind. Like, well, I don't know if I can be a doctor. I'm a Black woman. Only 10% are people of color. Hey, check out, Tia, look at her doing her thing. Look at this doctor. Look at that doctor. I want to go into this field, but I don't know how to navigate those barriers. Listen to this episode. Listen to this person's story. And if we don't help us, then the cavalry ain't coming.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
I want to do my part. I don't want to your point, I don't want to have any regrets in saying what I would have done. And listen, and I'm a work in progress. This podcast was probably like 5 or 6 years in the making. People kept telling me I needed to do a podcast. And I choose to believe that was messages I was receiving from God through other people, because none of these people knew one another. Oh, you should do a podcast. You should do this. And it didn't matter the subject matter, but I just knew that God wanted me to do a podcast. And I'm someone, as an executive producer, as someone who's done documentaries, feature films, etc. I'm the person you never see. You'll see my name in the credits. You'll never see me. So then God obviously wanted me to get beyond what that point of my career was and say, no, I want you to be able to galvanize people in the community by way of having them help, inspire others through their stories. So, like you said, we are all works in progress, and that includes me. Lastly, before I let you go, what are one of the ways that our viewers and listeners can find you, follow your journey, whether that's on social media, website, or anything that you feel comfortable with sharing?
Well, don't know how long TikTok will be around for, but I am on TikTok, Dr. Welsh OB-GYN, but I'm on Instagram as well, Dr. Welsh OB-GYN.
Okay.
And I'm on LinkedIn, Tia Welsh, for professional support. People reach out to me like as you did. So those are the ways you can find me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, shout out to LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is a phenomenal platform. You want to connect with people like Dr. Welsh. As we connected, we hadn't met before, but I'm glad that I reached out and you were very receptive to being a part of the show. Once again, I wanted to show my level of gratitude and appreciation for that. And to all of the TikTokers and the people on IG, Dr. Welsh is on there as well. So too am I. I'm everywhere. I'm TikTok.
I got a couple of dances with my residents. You'll see.
Okay. Oh, listen, say less. I'm going to definitely be checking that out. So that, like, you're the cool doctor that's got a little turn up in her. Dr. Wells, once again, thanks for joining us. I truly appreciated the conversation and all of the time you gave us. And also, I wanted to thank our viewers and listeners, whether you're watching us on Spotify or YouTube, or whether you're listening on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Audible, iHeart, or Pandora. As you know, every week we will continue to bring you proven professionals and rising entrepreneurs. And all of these conversations, just like this one, will help you prepare for takeoff. Dr. Welsh, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.